Hi, everyone. This is Wednesday, media specialist over at LTC Media, and you're watching the Lowellian. Today, we'll be talking to Julivic Marquez about a documentary that she filmed using LTC community resources. So we're going to learn a little bit about that. Julie, thank you so much for coming through and talking to us on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
So would you mind starting off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your work?
Yeah. So I have many names. But I grew up with one of my names that I grew up was Julie, short for Julivic, which my mom made up. It's a combination of Julia and Victor, my grandparents. And so I first went to school for writing. I grew up writing short stories and poems. I got that from my mother because growing up I saw her writing and journaling a lot. And then eventually I went into photography, and then I went into dance, and then I was like, oh my God, what do I do next? And then I found that film is a space where I can incorporate different media. And so, that's how I ended up with film.
Absolutely. And did you go to school for film, or is this sort of something you do more on as a hobby on your free time, or you're self-educated?
Yeah, I feel that I did not go to school for film, but I took film classes and different art classes. I did more photography.
Yeah.
And then and I was working more in the music scene, and then eventually I started transitioning more into wanting to integrate stories and moving image together. So I'm film makes sense. For me also, film is a way of meeting people, building community. So it also kind of connects with how I like to relate to other people.
Yeah.
So
I've always seen film as similar to theater in that so interdisciplinary and so collaborative. Like you're saying, you meet tons of people, and it's one of those things where everyone can get and contribute different things to it. And it can look so different.
Oh my God, yeah. I think that's the cool thing about it, is that there's no limits. You can do everything. I mean, there's I guess some structures and rules, but the fun thing about that is that you can break them. They're there to kind of guide something, but you can break them anytime.
So speaking of films, one of the things we wanted to talk about today was a film that you've been working on, a short documentary. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I received a grant from Wesley College Anti-Carceral Collaboratory. So ACC for short. That specific program, they work on understanding how the prison system affects families, affect people, and they provide folks who have been affected by the prison systems with resources to create their own projects. And I was one of the grant recipients, and I decided to do a short documentary with the woman in my family about how the prison systems have affected our family.
Yeah, and what's the title of your film?
Yeah, ¿A dónde van los sueños? So where do the dreams go?
Very good, very good. So one of the things that I remember is you're a new member to LTC, and you utilize LTC as a resource. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came into the space and how you connected our resources to the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so the LTC was very important because film can be very expensive.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
Especially with the equipment, and y'all here have the equipment, and also people like you who can help kind of people navigate around what equipment to use. And there's also a studio. I didn't use the studio specifically, but there's so much resources here that I think is so important for people who want to interact with film and TV, and also any other person who might not necessarily have this as their career, but I feel that here there's like the resources, both in like people and equipment. So to me, it was very important. Like I borrow cameras, I borrow lights, was the audio equipment. So yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, filmmaking is just so cost prohibitive if you're just diving in, even cheap cameras, is going to be thousands of dollars. So it's really nice to have a place where you can dabble a little bit, because maybe you aren't a camera person after all. You prefer audio mixing or, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So you started this project. When did you start it? And did you have a vision for what you wanted to make? And did that change as you went through the process itself?
Yeah. So this is like a very kind of like low budget type of project. And I wore many hats. So I was writing, doing lights, doing audio. I had an editor who like helped me, Mike Garza, also like with a lot of like not just the editing, but also the thinking through like this project, especially because it was something so personal.
Of course, yeah.
So my main thing was to make a comfortable and fun environment for the participants, who were my mom, my aunt, my grandma. And for me, that was very important because it also was the first time doing something like this, and like sharing their stories in this way. So to me, that was like the main thing.
Yeah.
And what was else about your question? I forgot.
Oh, yeah. So, like the initial vision, and while you were making it, did it shift or change, even so far as like in post-production, where you collect all this material and it's like, okay, how do these things actually fit together?
Yeah. So like, so at the beginning, like my main thing was to make a comfortable environment for them. So I also I know that they're very busy, so I wanted to like make the space, like every time that we meet was like 2 to 3 hours long. We met for 4 times. And I had like different activities planned, because I also wanted them to, again, feel comfortable in the sharing of their stories, because I know that some of that was painful, like their own personal experience with dealing with the carceral system, so the prison system, laws, police, all that. And also they had a brother and son, in the case of my grandmother, who had gone to prison. And like this was a story about how they had to navigate that system and how difficult it was for them. Because, when someone goes to prison for whatever reason, it also harms the families that person is connected to. So the film was also about that. It's like in this system, there's a lot of people getting harmed. There's the people who have received the harm. There's the people who also committed the harm. There's the people who are connected to everyone. And in the way that we in our society treat harm and accountability and rehabilitation, in my opinion, this systems just cause more harm. So this film was kind of like just giving a space for the women in my family who became support systems, to have a space for them to talk about kind of like what they went through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned harm and the various ways that shows up in this type of subject material, and it's I imagine there must be a great sensitivity to trying to approach this and navigate this. And you mentioned creating a comfortable space for the women that you're interviewing, your family members. I'm curious if there was kind of thoughts you had in terms of like navigating that, or maybe more so like, was there anything that your subjects, your family members spoke to on the subject that you found illuminating or surprising. Not necessarily looking for spoilers in the film itself for folks who want to watch it, but I'm curious what that was like in terms of like what they had to kind of say about some of those things.
Yeah, I feel that like I definitely try to be very like careful and gentle in what things would I asked them. Mm-hmm. And then I realized like they were ready to tell their stories.
Right.
And like I feel that I would just feel so honored to be able to be granted the opportunity and the resources to support them in telling their stories. Mm-hmm. And so things that I feel that like the main thing to me is how fearless they are. Like how, their brother was in prison. They don't speak English. They only speak Spanish. And they just went there like, to like interacting with the system. When there's also not a lot of like resources and like in Spanish, for instance. So to me, that's very like fearless, like that someone can go into a place like a prison and say, I need this to be able to see my family member, or like really go and say, I need this, or like, how do I do that to people who do not speak your language. Mm-hmm. And and in a way kind of like making them like look for the resources for you to be able to navigate the system that is in there in the first place. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, if I remember well your question, what I I just learned that they're very fearless.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I noticed when I was watching the film, and it's a short documentary, it's about 14 minutes long, it's an easy watch, was a lot of the initial interviews start off with questions about plants and sort of reactions to plants. I was curious if there was sort of like a theme or a way that you saw this sort of care that your family members have for plants and sort of the topics you were exploring.
Yeah, to me it was like important that like even though that we were talking about things that are hard and we're talking about harm and going through like different difficult things through the process, that there was a moment or there was spaces where they could connect with things that make them feel happy. Mm-hmm. And for them, it's plants. Like they grew up in like the countryside back in the Dominican Republic. And I found this like pretty cool spot through a friend. And I'm like, yeah, let's just go and do a field trip and film there. I'm probably gonna mess up the name of the place, but Logis. It's like a family-owned greenhouse somewhere in Connecticut, and and they were also so down for like, to hosting this project there.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, that was a really pretty space. I was like, look at all this greenery.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate that sort of like oscillating, because it is tough subject material. It's heavy things to talk about, but like there are all these like moments that you see of like where the folks being interviewed is like really excited, whether it's talking about like being caregivers to plants or serving and helping their community and their family. And my personal favorite was these moments where like the camera would kind of go off to the side and you hear this like joking around and laughter and kind of like, goofing off a little bit. So it's nice to have that juxtaposition and be able to conclude those moments, because they're, life has the heavy and the light all together. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
There was the moment within the film too where your family is visiting a detention center to try and make contact with your brother. Would you mind speaking a little bit on that, and as much as you're comfortable with?
Yeah, no, of course. So my uncle, he was released from prison, like he completed his sentence like maybe like a year or so ago.
Yeah.
But he's a green card holder. So in the context of the U.S., if you are a green card holder and you are and you spend more than 11 months in prison, you automatically get deported. So he completed his sentence. He left. He was like doing well in the sense of like he was not doing the same things that he was doing before. He was reintegrating back into the family, and then he knew that at some point he was gonna get deported. But with this new administration, there's this like ramps on like ICE raids. So he was detained by ICE on his way to work. So the filming was I filmed us going to one of the prisons, like looking for them. Like I was with his with two of my aunts who are also in the documentary, and and we were just like looking for answers and navigating kind of like that process. And it was kind of hard when I found out about kind of like the news, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do aside from like going with them to be a like support system to translate. And then I asked my friend, I'm like, I don't know what to do, and she's like, well, like this is about the carceral system, and this and the ICE is a form of the carceral system. And she's like, if you have it in you, if you can, you should record. So I did that, and I'm glad I kind of did. I'm glad like my aunts were and my family were cool with it, because I did, and then I'm like, because sometimes I do shit, and then and then I like ask for forgiveness later. I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out later. But in this process, they look at the footage, and I'm like, we can, if it's too much for you, if you don't want to do it, if you don't want that in the final thing, we can remove it. And to me, that's always very important when I'm working with someone, that we're both consenting on the final product. And they thought it was important to leave it there, so I left it there.
Yeah, so that was something that sort of arrived during production, I presume, right? It was something that sort of wasn't necessarily storyboarded or something.
No.
It's like an opportunity, I suppose. And then a conversation afterwards.
Yeah, and and I really thought, because then the following week we were gonna have our last shooting, we're filming, and it was at the plant place. And I thought, because of they were all sad and everything, that they were gonna cancel it. And I was kind of surprised when they were like, okay, cool, are we doing this? I'm like, okay, yeah, we're doing it. And that's something that I admire about them. Like, my family have a kind of crude, beautiful sense of humor. And it's because we've gone through a lot. And part of navigating things is like making jokes about it. And like, because you have to, navigate something. And you cannot get overconsumed with like the troubles and the sadness. Like, that's there and that's real. But also, I like how they like mix other things and mix humor. Like, all my family, we kind of do that. Yeah,
absolutely. So you have an event coming up and a screening. Would you mind speaking a little bit on that?
Yeah. So through a Mosaic Lowell grant, we were able to host a screening here, the 26th of April, from 1 p.m. to 2:30. The participants of the films are gonna be there for questions. The event is gonna be both in English and in Spanish. We're gonna be having someone who's gonna be translating. And it's free to the public. Anyone who wants to come and listen to their stories or share their stories, in a 30-minute range. They can come and and join us.
Absolutely. Oh, one question I forgot I want to loop back to is what would you like people to take away from having viewed it? And maybe this is for people to kind of find at the screening, but for folks who watch outside that context, do you have any thoughts that, good way to kind of think about this material?
Yeah. So I think that something, to me, was important to create also, in order to create this project, I was also looking for resources around the Latin American community in the United States and data about our interaction with the carceral system. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of data on that. There's also there's no documentaries about that. And to me it was important to have something out for specifically Spanish speakers, a space where or some media that will allow to share the stories of our interaction with the carceral system, how it has affected us, and hopefully other people who are going through the same thing do not feel alone. Mm-hmm. Or do not feel shame. So I think that was kind of one of the hopes, is to create something for people who also speak Spanish, who their only language is Spanish, on the effects of the carceral system. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. On families.
Is there any other, do you plan on having next steps for this project? Are there any other projects you're looking forward to? And how can people keep up with your work?
Yeah, so there's other projects. One of the projects I'm following, I used to live in Austin, Texas, so mm-hmm. I'm following a tradition there, specifically a lady who started this tradition 30 years ago, who brought tradition from Mexico to Austin, Texas, and her journey in kind of navigating, bringing this to Austin, and the struggles that she had to face. And this is a tradition that happens every year. More than 200 people participate. It's very intergenerational. So I'm following her stories, and I'm at the point where I'm just looking for funding.
Yeah.
And where can people find my work? I'm not on the traditional forms of social media. Mm-hmm. I decided to kind of bounce out of that because it was just too messy.
I feel that, yeah.
To say a least. But my website is I'll have to spell it in my mind. So MISUUZ.com, and that's where I put my things.
Very good, very good. Well, that's all my questions I have. Is there anything else that you want to let people know or speak on before we wrap up?
No, not at all.
Very
That's
good.
been great.
Well, my name's Wednesday. This is Julie. You've been watching the Lowellian. Thanks for watching.